Hey, this is Rob Riggle. You're listening to Out of Left Field on the Grueling Truth Network.
Hey, guys. Welcome back to Out of Left Field. Graham and Chris hanging out here with you again. A lot of stuff to get to this week, and we're going to touch on some sides of the game that we don't normally get to every week here on the show. For those of you who are baseball enthusiasts like Chris and myself, of course, last year, man, we were both out there in Arizona doing our stuff at Chase Field, and we actually went and watched a couple of games out at Buffalo Wild Wings, that kind of stuff. So as we put the ball in play on the show, it's really exciting for me. I mentioned to you guys last year I had a chance to go to Salisbury, North Carolina. I got selected to work a regional for senior softball, which is basically like a JV level for softball in Little League. And my evaluator, Brian Henry, has agreed to join us and talk a little bit about what it takes to get to Williamsport, because he is one of the few guys who's had a chance to go ahead and enjoy that experience. Brian, it's good to talk to you again, man. Thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit tonight.
Oh, thanks for allowing me to be on, guys. I appreciate it.
So we'll start off kind of with our soapbox first. Then we'll step back and have the enjoyment of the rest of the conversation, I think. You and I are part of a myriad of different groups on social media dealing with umpires, and it felt like this year much more compared to most. I mean, it was just it was nauseating just how much negativity rained down on the men and women who had a chance to go work their dream at Williamsport. And as someone who has their hands in the evaluating process, talk to us about what it takes for them to get there, beyond what the average consumer of the Little League World Series 2 weeks out of the year thinks when these people just show up on TV and are all of a sudden, seen just as much as the kids.
Yeah, it's an interesting sometimes to hear some of the talk and really kind of some of the stuff that gets swirled around out there. But the process for the most part to get to Williamsport can take a while. I was fortunate when I went that I worked the regional in 2012 in Warner Robins and was fortunate to go to Williamsport in 2016. But that is certainly not the norm. Our region has been fortunate over the past years to have 3 umpires selected every year. So that queue of umpires, so to speak, is kind of cleared, and it's you're able to get there a little sooner. But I know you look at compared to Southeast region to even some other regions like the West region, the West region is so large. And of course, with them hosting the Northwest and the West out there, they're using 16 umpires per year during their regional tournament. So you can only imagine how long that process would take for somebody from the West region to work their way through and be selected to Williamsport. It's interesting because, Graham, I know you guys see it on social media in particular. Everybody seems to think that it's just a reward for guys that have been doing it for a long time to send them to Williamsport in spite of their abilities. And having sit on this side of the fence from an evaluator standpoint and really knowing the intricacies of Little League as I do, that really is such a false thing to have out there. And I know Graham can relate to this, but the standards that we have in the Southeast region in particular, we all try to evaluate. There are currently 7 evaluators across the region that make up the region umpire staff, and those individuals work very, very hard to make sure that no matter what tournament that is being evaluated, that those guys are getting the same type of evaluation, whether it's senior baseball, senior softball, Little League baseball, Little League softball. So we think we're doing a pretty good job of sending qualified people to all the World Series, in spite of what some of the media seems to think.
So for those who don't know, and I've been through it, so and having been through it, it's different. We had a chance to sit during a couple of the games, and it's odd because in high school, kind of similar to you, I end up working on the evaluation and the training staff. So and watching some of my peers who are out there, reaching for the same goal I am, it's odd because you kind of fall back to evaluate, which I think every umpire does, because you always want to find a way to improve yourself, and by evaluating others and seeing what they do that you like, you can critique things and change things and improve yourself. But for those who don't know, what is the evaluation process? What goes into and what does it take for someone to get that 21 and get that recommendation to have a chance to go to their respective World Series?
Yeah, that's a good question, Graham. The standard form that we use through Little League International basically has 7 categories involved. So, and you mentioned the score of 21. A score of 21 or less will garner you a World Series recommendation. And so we evaluate to those 7 categories, and I wish I had those in front of me. But obviously, appearance, attitude, base work, plate work, handling situations, how we deal with coaches and such. All those garner a 1 through 5. So basically 3 being average, and when we say the word average, we don't mean average in your everyday local league. We mean average for that particular regional tournament, which is really a larger step up when it comes to the level of play and really what the level of umpiring should be. So, we look at those categories, and there are so many things under each of those categories, like plate mechanics, for instance. We're looking for, whether the umpires work in the slot, whether their head height is consistent from first pitch to last pitch, whether they have a good locking mechanism to make sure that their head height is there. Things like timing, control of the game, all those things factor into the evaluation process. And it is interesting to note too, and as we sit and we talk about evaluations, and Graham, I think you understand what I'm saying here. When you typically go out to evaluate an umpire, a lot of people forget to watch the umpires. They end up getting caught up in watching the game. And so from an evaluator's perspective, it's really, really important. And especially if you're working a regional like you did, Graham, with senior softball, where we had 4 umpires on the field at the same time. So anytime something happens on the field, you're watching 4 people. You're not watching just one person. And so the evaluation process really, and again, from our perspective in the Southeast region, we feel like we do it pretty well. We work as a staff to ensure that we're seeing all the right things, that all of us really are on the same page when it comes to evaluating umpires across the board. And that's important to us.
So I got to know, as an umpire, what was your experience in Williamsport like?
Oh, it was just the dream of a lifetime. I mean, I've been fortunate in other types of baseball. I've worked, high school state championships. I've done all those things. But I'll tell you right now, there is nothing like walking on the field in Williamsport. I was so fortunate. I actually had the very first plate game of the World Series in 2016. And then, of course, was fortunate enough to be selected to do the championship plate, the last game of the Little League World Series. So, the experience is great. You've got a lot of good things going on around the complex. They treat the kids like kings up there and really take care of them. They take care of the umpires. It is just it's an incredible experience. It's something you could sit and talk about for hours on end.
Brian, the one thing, and we'll let you go because I know you had a long night as it's been already back on the field. The one thing that I'm curious about, and this is something that Chris and I have discussed, do you feel, having kind of been in the machine as it moves, is ESPN pushing this whole thing into a direction that is becoming not as much bad for the kids, although the way they sometimes follow kids after a bad outing and the cameras on them as they're, as they're emotional, if they had they got hit hard, while they were pitching or whatever it is. And then also in the way that you still hear announcers question and kind of get that side eye to umpires. Is that, as that's growing, is that hurting the experience? Not as much maybe there, but for as people see it, the way they react to things that happen they're watching on TV.
Well, as it pertains to Little League and ESPN, I think that relationship is rock solid. I think it's a good relationship, and you're right. While they show the kids that probably after they've gotten hit hard or rocked or something like that, but they do a great job of making sure they're covering their kids up at the Grove when they're playing ping pong, when they're playing video games, when they're hanging out with each other. So that from that perspective, I think they do a really good job. From the umpire perspective, announcers are announcers. They've got their job to do, and they sometimes they voice their opinion, just like they do on a Major League broadcast, Major League Baseball broadcast as well. Do I think it plays into where the media picks up on it? Probably a little bit. But I tell you, I'm finding more and more, and Grant, you may be experiencing this too, but even whether it's Little League Baseball, whether it's high school baseball, whether it's college baseball, there's just so much more criticism for the guys that walk out there on the field and try and arbitrate the game. And you hate to see the articles like I've read in USA Today, that I've read on Yahoo News, Google News, Sports, all those things that talk about, hey, we need professional umpires or minor league guys calling the Little League World Series. Well, I'll be honest with you. I think that's kind of just reaching per se. Fortunate enough to talk with Jerry Davis a good bit because he's advising Little League Baseball now. And he understands there's some unique differences between what Major League umpires and minor league umpires do and what Little League umpires do on that 60-foot field, and how much faster the game is when you get to Williamsport. And that's one of the things that having experienced Williamsport and try to help others understand the speed of that game up there is absolutely incredible. So are umpires going to make mistakes? Man, it happens. It happens. Unfortunately, it's just on a really big stage.
Two things before we let you go. The play in the Georgia game, I can't remember who they were playing, where the walk-off to right field, everyone slamming the umpire there, saying that he was in the way of the throw. And looking at it, he was in exact position where you tell us to be. He was right on the fair side of the fair foul line in right field. He turned with the ball, made his way back, and it felt as though the player took 3 or 4 steps in his line. And seeing that, if you did see it, would you have changed anything that he did in trying to get out of the way of the fielder besides disappearing like an obstruction call?
Yeah, the only thing I saw that, and I think the biggest mistake, and I'm almost certain he's watched it 100 times and probably beat himself up 100 times. I think the only thing that I could have suggested that he'd done differently would have been he initially turned his back to the fielder. So it put him in a difficult position. If he would just simply have drop stepped and opened up where he could see the fielder, he could have taken that ball, given the fair foul signal or the catch signal, which he also had, And then if he would have stepped out of there would have been no issues whatsoever.
I did have one more question for you before we let you go. I understand that Graham got a 21 on his evaluation when he was up there in North Carolina, and I was just wondering how much did that cost Graham? How much did he pay you? How much did he pay you for that 21? Because I know that he didn't. Graham's not that good of an umpire.
He did a good job. Graham will probably tell you, because the word on the street is I'm not an easy guy as an evaluator. And the reason I do that is because I think if I put my name on that dotted line and pass those guys along, then I have no qualms about them being on TV in the future. And so I might be a little more difficult than some.
I make it my business on a regular basis to give Graham as much crap as absolutely possible. Because
I think that's a great philosophy to have.
Well, especially with Graham. Right? I mean, especially with Graham. Otherwise, his head gets a little too big and it doesn't fit through doorways. And
then you put Buster Duggan out together and it all goes to craziness.
There's where the problem lies.
Brian, thanks so much for hanging out with us, man. It was really good to talk to you. I hope you're doing well, and just thanks for giving us a little bit of insight on things that maybe we all didn't understand beforehand.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Little League's been so good to me over the years, and it's a program I'm proud to be associated with, and will be for time to come.
All right. Thanks a lot, Brian. Have a great rest of your night, bud.
All right, take care, guys. Have a good evening.
You too.
Yep.
Again, thank you to Brian Henry for hanging out with us, man. It was an awesome, absolutely awesome experience, and it was one of those where, I got myself in a little bit of trouble. Started goofing off, and and we were having a blast. But it was one of those moments where, you're having so much fun, you got to kind of rein it in. And luckily, I didn't shoot myself in the foot so bad I lost my evaluation, and we had to kind of pony up and tuck our tail between our legs and apologize. But had a chance to work the kind of the consolation play-in game and the championship game. Worked both on a Sunday at third base and second base, respectively. And, I was fortunate to get my 21. I was pretty happy with that. And, of course, I told you the story about having my dad out there with, for my plate game. So pretty awesome. Right. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to, if you're interested in volunteering with Little League, please do. Just, Google Little League. It's its own separate thing. I mean, it is. It's a fantastic thing to do. LittleLeague.org, of course, at Little League on Twitter. You can check them out. But it's a great organization. Everything's all volunteer. The most I get paid for a game, if I'm really, 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 really lucky, is maybe some chicken tenders, a slab of ribs if they're really cooking, and a thing of sweet tea. We volunteer for the love of it. So check out your local Little League and volunteer if it's something that you so desire. Moving on to the big field, back to the big bases, the big lights, the big stage. We're going to go West Coast. Chris, this is something that I think we discussed this pre-show. This has absolutely no effect on this year, but it has a monstrous effect, potentially, on the coming 5 or 6 years in the Bay Area. Buster Posey goes on the disabled list. His season is over. He will have hip surgery. For a guy who's had the hip injury that he has, he's been very productive this year. The Giants have said, quote, this is from Brian Sabian, the GM, quote, health-wise, they say it's a very common surgery, more so maybe in football. Recovery time is what it is. It's 6+ months. And if you hit the mark well enough, you should be able to perform in spring training and hopefully start the season on time, close quote. Well, this surgery, he's having work done to his labrum, having some bone spurs removed. And this is one of those things that,
He's
surgery. Was that?
He's had the work done. They just announced about 5 minutes ago that the surgery was successful.
Okay.
And he'll be returning to the Bay Area in a couple of weeks for rehab.
Well, this is one of those things that with any surgery, it's nice to have someone give you some expertise on what it's like, kind of their own experience on what it's like when this is done. We at the show, because we are all about providing you with the best experience possible, we went out. I looked high and low, searched through all kinds of candidates who might be able to give us some information, and I have some on the best one possible to give you guys a little bit of information, and that is Chris Furry.
Yeah, I've actually had this surgery twice. My left hip was a resection, which means that they actually take that torn piece of labor and they cut it out and they smooth out the edges. And then I had a bone spur removed. I had bony substance debrided from the top and bottom of the socket joint of my left hip. About 7 months later, I had the same surgery again on my right hip, only this one, the identical surgery to the one that Buster Posey's having. I had a labral repair and bony debridement, a removal of bone spurs on my right hip. Neither surgery was entirely successful. And it's one of the things, both doctors, the first one was done by a civilian doctor, and he does surgeries like this for athletes, which is why the Army sent me to him, because they didn't have somebody at Fort Lewis that could do it. And he told me, he was like, look, 50-50, if you rehab well, you have a 50-50 shot of regaining full mobility and full range of motion. As far as the military side, when the Army did the surgery, I really felt like I wasn't really given a chance, considering that some mistakes were made in the recovery room, and the labral repair tore in the recovery room the same day, within hours after having the surgery. So I don't know what rehab would have been like on that hip had those decisions not been made the way they were.
So the hope obviously is that just for quality of life, because he's early to mid 30s. It feels old in baseball terms. He's very young as a human being. He's got a wife, kids, which still to this day, one of my favorite quotes from him. And I know I told you about it. I don't know if you've ever watched it, and you can find it on YouTube. The MLB 13 documentary they did in the Giants Royals World Series. Well, when Teddy Barrett is working the plate, I think it was Game 4, and the night before, Teddy's going through the tunnel and sees Posey, and he's holding his grandson. And so Posey asks him, "Hey, who was that with you yesterday?" He says, "Oh, that was my grandson. He's like 11 months old." And he's like, "That's got to be awesome." "Oh, man, it's the best. I've only changed one diaper." And you hear Posey go, "That's more than my dad has." Which just, made me, I just started dying. I started dying laughing. It's great talking between those two. But, just made me, I laugh. So it's one of those things that for quality of life, I hope it goes well. But this has a pretty big ripple effect through this ball club, as they are not in any capacity yet in a rebuild, but they need to retool, they need to get younger, and they have the ability, and they definitely had the personnel in place up top to make those moves happen rapidly and set themselves up in a continuous ability to be successful. That being said, and you have mentioned this a couple times on the show, and I think it bears repeating, I believe we are at the point now where this is going to be Joe Mauer territory. And Mauer has still continued to play and perform relatively well, not as a catcher. I do believe this is the point where we see Posey begin to make that transition. And if he is going to make that transition to first base, that leaves a really dark cloud over Brandon Belt, who you hope, if he can at least kind of retain some of that success from early in the year and keep some trade value high, I think this is when the tough decisions begin to get made where Belt might need to be moved out to bring up young blood in the catching core and keep Posey in the fold as a leader and a hitter for that ball club. You're much more in tune with this club just because of your fandom and your relative proximity to them. Am I reaching here?
No, I think it's absolutely the time to think about dishing Belt and trying to get something young and competitive back for him. I love Brandon Belt for just, for his contributions to the two of the 3 World Series. He's a fun guy to watch. He likes to have fun, and so he makes some videos and stuff that are fun to watch. But realistically, Buster Posey is not going to be the future catcher of this team. In fact, I would be sort of surprised to see him come back in the full-time catcher capacity next year even. In the article that was just released by MLB, where it said that his surgery was successful, it also mentions that the surgery was underwent with the hopes of him getting the range of motion and his full set of skills as a hitter back. It doesn't mention him getting a full range of skills as a catcher back, and I think that's indicative of the idea that he's probably going to stay out of the crouch for the most part next year. It makes a lot of sense to try to get something for Brandon Belt in the offseason and move on from him as the everyday first baseman and put Posey out there. Put Nick Hundley behind the plate as the everyday catcher, a position that he hasn't ever really been in, but that he definitely has the skill set for. And then if you're going to catch Posey at all, I think it's just for Mad Bum, to be honest. In a special circumstance sort of way, once every 5 days maybe. But I don't picture Posey catching next year if he comes back. Not coming off a surgery like that, even 6 or 8 months later. But what I do see is this young catcher that was drafted by the Giants coming up relatively quickly to play behind Hundley, get a feel for it, and then when Hundley's ready to go, we put this new catcher in, Posey at first base, and we run the infield that way. I think it makes the most sense, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we're at the point, and this is going to become very indicative in not quite the same circumstance. I don't know. Obviously, I was much more the Braves fan growing up. But even though, TBS for the Braves every night. To me, this is going to kind of – I don't think it has the ability to be a Javi Lopez, Eddie Perez type of thing where Eddie caught only Greg Maddux and Javi pretty much caught everybody else. I think at that point where Bumgarner needs to – and I'm not saying this in a I'm not saying this in a way where Bumgarner is not a professional, but he's going to have to be a professional and be able to move on from his closeness with Posey and, be able to attain that same kind of chemistry with the new catcher. And that's the thing is, how well is he willing to work in this new guy as he comes into the fold, hopefully next year. I think he'll make it. I think obviously he'll be in big league camp. If the bat performs well, it makes sense to have him sit behind Hundley. Then slowly you kind of begin to work him into the fold 1-2. And as you said, I think it makes sense if Hundley performs well, then you also have a really good ability to have some trade bait there. Maybe make a move, get someone young. And I'm going to just throw this out there. This is spitballing, nothing behind it. But if Manny Machado decides to go to New York, if the Yankees can somehow pull that off, that leaves an empty spot for Miguel Andujar. Likely could be the AL Rookie of the Year. If the Yankees have a reason – I'm sorry, not Andujar, Torres. Robert Torres, I'm sorry. If they can have a reason to move either one of those guys, I think at that point, if you're the Giants, you've got to be proactive in trying to go out and get one of those guys.
I mean, I agree. The question is, they've got Longoria next year as well. So what do you do with Evan Longoria coming off of a season where his trade value is going to be relatively low? And do you want to keep that much money on the payroll to sit on the bench? I understand that if you can get an Andujar, probably not, or a Gleyber Torres, maybe, then you got to do that, right? But because those guys will be controllable. But the question remains, what do you do with an aging Evan Longoria at that point? Do you sit him? Do you play him until his contract's over and then throw Andujar in or throw Torres in? I don't really like either of those solutions. Maybe put Andujar in left or right field for a little while, move Kutch around. I don't know.
And that's where I think the Giants they went for broke trying to grab some veterans this year. And I feel like at the end it's going to backfire, or they're going to have to eat a lot of money to move these guys out of their roster and give it a chance to go ahead and make some moves to get themselves in line to have a run the next 2 or 3 years, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And it's unfortunately going to be one of those things where they're going to get dinged pretty hard because for example, Longoria is making $13.5 million, $13 and 2/3 million this year. And I think he's getting the same amount of money next year, I think. But you figure he's $13 million when you could go out and get someone, even if they would have gone out last offseason and gotten someone who was controllable and younger and let him play third base. The bat's not the same, obviously, but then again, the bat from Evan Longoria has not been what it has been in the past. The guy's hitting under 250. He's getting on base at a 282 clip. He's not producing in any way coming off of a top 20 MVP season just 2 years ago.
Right.
So
I don't know, it's going to be a lot of question marks arise off of the surgery. And I think that really begets the question, if Posey doesn't recover well, do you have to look at really blowing it up and starting over again? You still have some of your talent there, but the question is going to end up being, how long can you keep them healthy? Guys, when we come back, the waiver deadline is right around the corner. One big move has already been made. One move that got made earlier might pay big dividends for a team in New York. Which team is it, and how might it help both the player and the team? Talk about that when we come back right here on Out of Left Field. Hey guys, it's Graham here from Out of Left Field. Chris and I love baseball, and we could never imagine seeing a batter step out of the box because he didn't want to face a pitcher. Did you know boxer Curtis Harper walked out of the ring in protest after the opening bell of a match this weekend? If you didn't, stop by thegruelingtruth.net. Check out Survive in Advance with Mike Goodpaster, and while you're there, see what's happening in the NFL, even the CFL, and of course our favorite, Major League Baseball. Do Matt Andrews Scavage's power rankings match up with ours, or do you think we are just that much better? Let us know what you think at OO Left Field on Twitter, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook, and of course thegruelingtruth.net and at gruelingtruth on Twitter. Thegruelingtruth.net, where legends speak. And welcome back to the show, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us again. I want to thank, again, Brian Henry for stopping by and talking a little bit of Little League. Man, it's never anything wrong with talking every level of baseball. It's one of the things we do here. Probably our best behind the mask segment since we started. I think we had Hunter and Jerry on before we really kicked off that segment. So, again, my thanks to Brian, a great guy, great friend. Really glad to have gotten to know him. And, he definitely gave me, one of the best weekends of my life as my evaluator. So we mentioned as we went to break that with the waiver deadline here, there might have been some trades made right at the end of the non-waiver and part of the waiver deadline that might help out one really important team over there in New York. And that is, I think we've all pretty much guessed it at this point, because who really cares what the Yankee or what the Mets are doing this year? They have no chance in hell of doing anything except maybe getting the first pick in the draft, although I think that's pretty much going to be fought between the Orioles and the White Sox and the Royals. But Aroldis Chapman went on the DL about 5 days ago with inflammation in his left knee. And, Chris, we know this knee has been giving him trouble for a while, which is, no pun intended, troublesome because of how much power he uses to push that long, lanky frame forward and put those 101, 103 mile per hour fastballs across the plate, or the sliders that he can't, actually command. Different subject, but with this knee inflammation, before he came out, and he came out 6 pitches into a closing stint, we had seen an average drop in velocity of 96 miles per hour. Now, it has seemed like we've been talking for the last 2 or 3 weeks on the show that the Yankees are they're hurt, and they keep getting hurt, and they keep getting hurt, which makes my dad excited because he loves seeing the Yankees get hurt and maybe miss the playoffs. But somehow, the team is still 8-2 in their last 10. They are still, they're 6 games pretty much, I think, entrenched behind the Red Sox, but are still 4.5 games up in the wild card. Man, I keep thinking we're going to see some kind of slide here, but I feel like with this injury, all it does is make Zach Britton's status go up, hopefully, next year.
Well, and it's gonna be interesting to see what Britton does in this situation, or if he even really gets the opportunity that I think he should in this situation. I mean, why not go after him? See if he can come in and do the job. I mean, Dellin Betances has been hit and miss all season, so you still got some time. Why not? Why not make a move now and see if we can see what someone who could be dominant in that position. I don't know that the Yankees are going to give him that shot. Now, he did manage to come in, finish off the Orioles in his return to Baltimore, but
which had to feel like sweet vengeance.
Yeah, absolutely. But do they make the move? Do they put Britton in that spot? Do they let him have a chance to dominate? Someone who I think we both agree, if he gets back on track where he was a year or two ago, could absolutely be as dominant, if not maybe even more dominant than Aroldis Chapman. I don't know that he'll ever do what Aroldis Chapman did in the first half, where he posted that 1.35 ERA.
Right.
But still dominate as a closer and leave Betances in that sort of setup position, because I just don't see Betances as the guy at the tail end of the game.
Well, if they don't go with Britton, it has to be David Robertson. It makes the most sense. He's been a closer before in his career. Excuse me. Has 136 career saves. Has not had a save. I'm sorry, has had 4 saves thus far with the Yankees. But guy has a 3 ERA. He has a 7-3 record as a reliever. So when he comes in, if they're down, he's keeping them in positions to win, and the team is backing him up and putting runs across the board. With Britton, we have seen, so far this year, still an ERA over 4, a 1-0 record, which, again, it's more a matter of, are you in the right position? But 5 total saves. Now it's in 28 2/3 innings pitched. So this, to me, is a moment of, I think it's still Robertson's closing job to keep until Chapman gets back. But this is a chance for Britton to at least, with a team who is winning, who we're going to see into October, it's a chance to see Britton on a stage, and maybe, I'm sorry to Buck Showalter, but maybe we'll actually see Aaron Boone use him in a situation where his usage is garnered. Obviously, the biggest stain on Showalter's resume.
I agree completely. But the Yankees have some time to make a decision at closer, but not a lot of time. They need to figure out exactly which direction they're going to go in, and they need to do it quickly because they only hold a 4-game wild card lead over the Oakland Athletics at this time. And if the A's keep playing the way they've been playing over the last few months, that lead is going to evaporate quickly. We're talking about a lead that was at one point more than 10 games. And so they're getting crept on really, really quick. And if the A's don't win that division, they're going to be bucking for that first spot.
Right. And let's be honest, tendonitis is not a 10-day, fix.
Right.
It's going to be something that's going to linger over Chapman, and having Britton or Robertson available could be a very, very big, kind of feather in their cap if it comes down the pike where they need that extra, arm speed and a pitching ability in their bullpen. The other side, probably the biggest move thus far of the waiver deadline, has to be the Cubs acquiring Daniel Murphy. Murphy likes hitting in Wrigley Field. He's hit .431 in Wrigley Field against the Cubs in his career, so it seemed kind of logical that, well, if he's done it to us, maybe he'll do it for us. And thus far, when you ask me, well, what's Daniel Murphy done? He's hit .310 this year. Well, in his 5 games for the Cubbies, he's hitting .391 with a 1.112 OPS. Already has 2 homers. He has 8 homers for the year. 2 of them have come in the Cubs uniforms. Has driven in 5, a walk, and 2 strikeouts. Man, with Addison Russell hurt, Chris Bryant, we've seen some injuries kind of been hampering him. The kid they have filling in, David Bodie over there at third, has looked pretty doggone good. He's no Chris Bryant, but he's definitely holding that position down pat. I mean, they made the choice to move Baez over to short. I like that move better than you actually let on, just because Baez is so versatile with the glove, and that is short is really a range-filled position, and I feel like having Baez there with the youth and his ability to really expand, his working area with his speed and his glove makes it a more logical spot for him to rotate to. Right now, man, this Cubs team is looking really, really good. Obviously, the Murphy acquisition made a ton of sense, and right now they're 4 games clear of the surprising St. Louis Cardinals sitting second, with the Brew Crew sitting a half game back, 4.5 out of the top spot in the Central and the National League.
Well, I think that from a perspective of needing a bat to really jumpstart this lineup's offensive capabilities, and putting a guy in the lineup who forces pitchers to throw to these other big hitters, this move made a whole lot of sense. Defensively, it makes sense. You got to wonder, when the entire infield is healthy again, where do you go from there, right? Addison Russell, the obvious shortstop. Since, let's be honest, Daniel Murphy doesn't play shortstop. Baez, the obvious second baseman. You got
Rizzo at first,
Chris Bryant at third base, who,
some guy, just some guy. When he comes back, and if he comes back at 100%, then the question becomes, you have an MVP, perennial all-star caliber second baseman. You have an MVP, perennial all-star caliber third baseman. You have an MVP and perennial all-star caliber shortstop. And you have Rizzo. But where do you put Daniel Murphy in that middle infield? You don't. Where do you put him in the corners? You don't.
So from a bat perspective, it makes sense, but where are we going to put Daniel Murphy?
I understand that Russell is 24 years old, but we have not seen him since his All-Star year, his one and only All-Star year in 2016, play more than 110 games. Played 110 last year, 112 so far this year. Now granted, still, he's not playing much right now, but he's hitting 259 to 244 career hitter. Now, granted, 24 years old is a lot different than 33 years old, but man, I mean, Daniel Murphy is a career 300 hitter in 10 years in the big leagues, and is a guy who, has just kind of even more so than he was, even when he was hitting, in the high twos, he's kind of burst onto the scene. And oddly enough, here, I think part of the reason his all-star star has not risen much is because of where he's played. Kind of been overshadowed by the guys of Harper. Obviously, you had Zimmerman, last year, whatever. But I'm not going to go on the limb and say you get rid of a 24-year-old for a 33-year-old. But where it is right now, Murphy is your better choice and has proven to be so over the last 4 or 5 years that Russell's been in the big leagues.
But your better choice where?
I think Javi makes a ton of sense at shortstop. I think Baez would be a great shortstop. And you can still leave – because you still have Zobrist, which I think at that point Zobrist is going to have to move on unless he's happy being, a utility role player who can be kind of, the utility guy that goes around and plays by platoon. But to me, it makes a great deal of sense if the Cubbies can offer, a qualifying offer to Murphy next year, hold on to him, see if they can use him at second if Baez is comfortable at short. The more chemistry they get, I mean, as good as we thought that infield was with Russell and Baez, man, with Murph and Baez, I got a hard time thinking that's not going to be even better.
I gotta go ahead and disagree, man. I gotta go ahead and disagree. Addison Russell statistically is the better shortstop than Baez. Baez has done well at shortstop, but his fielding percentage is lower by almost 10 points. His defensive WAR is lower by a full game. He's not statistically a better shortstop than Addison Russell. Now, maybe the bat's better. I'll allow you that. But Addison Russell is a Gold Glove caliber shortstop. If it wasn't for a guy named Brandon Crawford in San Francisco, who's won 3 in a row, he probably would have been in line for that Golden Glove.
And stop being a selfish jerk.
And to be honest, I don't think you move a Golden Glover out of the shortstop position or a Gold Glove caliber shortstop out of the shortstop position for a guy who can win a Gold Glove at second base, and to put a 33-year-old guy in that spot. It doesn't make sense to me. You need the bat, but defensively, Russell is the obvious guy. So defensively, again, where do we put Daniel Murphy? You've got one of the – let's be honest. That whole infield from 3, 4, 5, 6, that whole infield is probably one of the strongest infields in Major League Baseball.
Yes.
When they're all healthy, they're probably the strongest infield in Major League Baseball. So you take Daniel Murphy, who's a strong ball player, but he's a bat. When it comes to that infield, all Daniel Murphy is a bat at this point, because when they're healthy, that's 4 potential Gold Gloves.
I don't disagree. The argument I make, I think, is based solely on, to me, 10 fielding percentage points from 977 to 967 in 120 or 130 fewer games at a position for Javi Baez is, to me, you can write that off. He's still taking time getting used to that position. To me, Baez has a bat that we really got to see it come alive in the home run derby. We saw how well he can turn on the inside pitch, how fast his hands are. But man, when you can get Bryant and Rizzo all working together, plus have Murphy in there, we saw what having Murphy when he first came in did for guys like Ryan Zimmerman and Bryce Harper, obviously coming over, and that was part of Harper's MVP year. I just think that adding that kind of pop into a stadium where he has been, as career historically absolutely dominant would make a ton of sense. And I get that the optics of not holding on to a 24-year-old shortstop or having to do something where Russell doesn't play every day just doesn't make any sense. And I might just be a prisoner of the moment and be kind of crazy, but I don't know, man. I'm it's hard not to be impressed. Hell, you talk about fielding at shortstop. Addison Russell fields at 972. That's about 5, maybe 6 points different than what Baez will be.
I don't see it as being the right move to remove Addison Russell. Addison Russell he's too young, he's too controllable, he's too inexpensive, and he's too damn good. I'll give you this. The offensive numbers aren't what they used to be. And that's not, that's saying something because this is only his fourth year in the league. He's not hitting like he was. He's hitting actually 10 points higher than he normally does.
Well, and I'll give you I believe it was a wrist injury to Murphy this year, just hampered him a lot. He's hitting, only played in 61 games. But before that, man, between 2012 and 2017, the lowest number of games he played in was 130. At some point, when do you got to tell Russell, man, look, I get it's been 4 years, but you played 151 in 2016, you played 142 in 2015, and then, we had, you've been out 40 to 50 games the last 2 years. Again, maybe you're kind of figuring out which one. Maybe I'm looking at this too short-sighted, and that is part of what makes baseball great and awful at the same time, because it's so easy to get caught up in that little chunk, because that little chunk is so important. But again, I see the positives here, but at the end of it, if I was GM, would I sign a 33-year-old and let a 24-year-old go? Of course not. It would make absolutely no sense. I should get fired.
Agreed.
Not from the show.
Well, it's hard to fire somebody from a volunteer position. So you've got that going for you, which is nice.
But I brought you on. Don't I get to fire you if I want to?
No.
Damn. I need to rethink this contract that I haven't written yet.
Because I know where you live.
Very true. I know where you live. Don't forget that. And I know what causes your wife.
No, you don't, because I moved.
I know what causes your wife to physically harm you.
I know what causes your wife to physically harm you.
Does she listen to the show?
How's that gasometer working?
Why are we hashing this out on the show at the moment? The gasometer works fine. Roadhouse. You know what? It takes right to the Roadhouse. So real quick, guys, as we go through the standings, we're not going to get too deep into them. You do have to look forward, or maybe hate the idea of our power rankings coming out next show. And please stop by and check out our Facebook page, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook. We're at OO Left Field on Twitter. I want to thank you guys. As far as the grueling truth goes, in the last 2 weeks, we have been number 3 and number 5, respectively, in the most listened to podcasts, averaging out at about 3.5 or 3.5 thousand views, per week. So awesome. You guys have been great to us since we began this, and it keeps growing. So if you love the show, let your friends know. You can always get it on Apple Podcasts. Just search the Grueling Truth Network. You got to find our specific show, but you can always listen to it on Apple Podcasts, as well as, I believe, iHeartRadio and on Spreaker.com. Real quick, taking a look through the American League. Red Sox are on top. I'll tell you what, still, man, I'm telling you right now, I am so glad I'm not a writer because the freaking Tampa Bay Rays just swept a home series, which included a 4-game sweep of the Red Sox, the first Red Sox sweep on the road, I believe since 2016, and the first sweep of the year at home or away. They are 70-61. Think about that. They are 4 games behind the Cleveland Indians, who are leading the AL Central. I mean, tip your hat to Kevin Cash, man. I mean, honestly, that is it's impressive. And we laugh at just, man, how bad the Blue Jays are. They're 10 games below 500 at 60 and 70. They have a better record than the White Sox, the Tigers, the Royals, and they're 1 game behind the Minnesota Twins. Again, the 4 teams behind. Just how different these divisions are. The Orioles sit where we expect them to sit. Already mentioned the Indians being on top. We know that one's already pretty much sealed up. The West, man, that is going to be – I'll tell you right now, man, here's what we're going to do. As we begin to watch, because you and I have agreed that the West is pretty much now just going to be based on a series of series. If we decide we're going to finally break it down and write an article, which I know might be tough because you're back into grad school, it is going to be titled How the West Was Won. Because I still have no freaking idea how the West is going to be won. Right now the A's are a 1.5 back of the Stros. The Mariners are 6.5 back in third place. They're 74-57. The Angels and the Rangers running at the bottom half. Right now, man, the East and the National League, that is looking like a good time. My Braves sitting on top. I say my Braves because, I grew up watching them. Couldn't tell you a lot. Don't watch them a ton now. But they are 3 games up on the Phillies. The Nationals have thrown in the white towel. The Mets and the Marlins round out the bottom part of that division. Man, it is fun right now. And honestly, this entire National League is still up for everything. The Cubs are 4 games up on the Cardinals, who are now a half game up somehow on the Brewers. That's crazy in itself. That's going to be a knockdown, drag out, a bunch of interdivisional games going to be played, going to have fun there. And right now, the Diamondbacks, a game up. Kenny Jansen has come back. He's had a lot of difficulty since he got back from the heart issue. Everything else there. The Dodgers 2.5 back, though, of the Diamondbacks, and the Rockies splitting the difference at a game back behind Arizona. It is going to be a really, really fun next month.
Yeah, one thing I think we got to look at is in the American League West, you got the Yankees and the Red Sox. They got 20 games left. And
in the American League West?
I'm sorry, East. In the American League East. You got the Yankees and the Red Sox.
Go West, young man. It's been a long day. It's been a long day. You're starting grad school. I'll cut you a break.
Excuse me. They got 30 games left in the American League East, and they're both winning ball games at a clip right around. Well, the Red Sox are winning at a 680-plus clip. The Yankees at a 630-plus clip. So I don't see, if they continue with those numbers, I don't see how either of those teams misses 100 wins, especially not the Red Sox. They're at 90 with 30 games left. They would have to go on a slide to miss 100 wins. But the interesting thing is there's not a single team in the National League that's going to hit 100 wins. Not one. There's not a single team in the National League that's at 80 wins yet with 30 games left. We could conceivably see an entire National League below 90.
Yeah.
What the heck, man?
The Cubs might be the only ones to crack it, and that's 91, 92.
Maybe. And which is going to be interesting because the Indians are going to make the playoffs under 90, I think. Maybe 90, maybe 91, 92.
Right.
But that doesn't – they could win 85. They're going to go to the playoffs.
Right.
in the National League, winning 85 doesn't guarantee you anything. In some divisions, it doesn't guarantee you anything divisionally.
Yeah.
The National League Central probably going to have 3 teams that hit 85 this year. But it's like watching. We're trying to see who is going to be the best of the worst. The National League this year has underperformed and underwhelmed, I think, terribly. And realistically, the Astros could hit 100 wins too. And if we have 300 win teams in the playoffs and one of them's a wild card team, and they're all American, I mean, the implications here are that the American League has somehow set itself up for success perennially for a long, long time.
I disagree with the premise the National League has underperformed. The Dodgers underperformed. The Nationals underperformed. But the Phillies and the Braves are way beyond where we thought they would be, even for what they've added. The Cubs have massive rotational issues. Darvish is done for the year, good riddance. But I mean, look at what at the Cardinals, all of a sudden, they're making a push. I mean, they're a half game up in the wild card. We're talking just about regular standings right now. If we take a look into the wild card, what we expect, of course, the Yankees and the A's sit on top, and then the Mariners are the only team really within striking distance. They're 5 games back. The Rays are 9 games back. Now, granted, they're 8-2 in their last 10. They won 8 straight. I mean, if the Rays somehow make it into the wild card, hell hath frozen over. But towards the National League, right now, dude, I mean, you mentioned it, and we've said it at this point, the entire time. Only way that another Western team gets in is through, or only time a West team gets into the playoffs is through the division. But right now, the wild card teams, we've got 5 teams within 2.5 games. Of course, you have the 2 teams already in it. The Cardinals and the Brewers, if we stop right now, are the 2 teams to make it in. The Rockies would be a game out. The Phillies are 2 games out. The Dodgers are 2.5 games out of the wild card. I mean, it's even if this is just a single wild card, back to the way it used to be, it would still be a great race because of the A's and because of all these teams in the National League.
Right. I agree. This is going to be a fun September. And I realize we say that every year, that this is going to be a fun September. And the great thing about baseball is that for somehow, some way, every year, it is a really fun September. So, but the implications in the American League right now make me think that this is going to be one of the more fun Septembers that we've had in quite a long time.
Absolutely. And I think it's safe to say, with the way that we just talked about the standings, wild card, those power rankings are about to get shaken the bleep up.
Yep.
Again, guys, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks again to Brian Henry for stopping by, talking some Little League baseball. Hope you guys have maybe a little different understanding now. I'm not saying you always agree with what you see. I don't always agree with what I see on the TV with those guys, but you know what? They're out there. They're out there getting the chance to do a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Cut them a little bit of slack. Cheer them for finally making it to something that big instead of just tearing them down because they are the umpire. For all of us here at the Grilling Truth Network, get yourselves ready. College football is back on the way here. The kickoff classics beginning this weekend. Of course, my neck of the woods, we're going to have Alabama and Louisville. And, of course, you get a new head coach at your Sun Devils. Of course, Herm Edwards going to be taking over there at ASU. Enjoy the NFL just around the corner. Make sure to check out thegrowingtruth.net. All your football needs and baseball needs, just stay with us. For Chris, I'm Graham. Thanks, guys. See you next week here on Out of Left Field.